Customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DiJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you are a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution podcast. I'm your co-host, Denise Thompson, and I am here with the John DiJulius. How are you, John?
Great. Denise, how are you?
I'm great. You know, we talked recently that I was entering my
7th decade. I'm not entering. I think you've been in it.
I'm in it. I'm doing more
right now, everyone thinks you're 70 because we said that.
And you are as well in your 7th decade. And You've got a birthday coming up.
I do. But I think I've seen some good posts on like TikTok saying men don't celebrate their birthdays.
No? Why?
I don't know.
Do you like to celebrate?
No, I never. Other than it's an excuse to get my kids to come visit me, which they are. Cal's flying in. He's actually flying in for our Believe in Dreams, gala, but it's also, so it's a one time my kids will make me a priority.
That's nice. Nice.
I'll definitely take advantage of that.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, happy early birthday, John.
Thank you. Did you enjoy yours?
Of course. I always enjoy birthday.
Did Ken spoil you?
We went to Chicago where his kids are. And so it was his youngest daughter's 30th birthday was the same week. And so they had a birthday party for her, but we did dinners every night and the party. And it was great. It was good. It was fun.
Did you get any recognition there or was it overshadowed by?
I didn't want that. You know, who wants to be, happy 30th and then, it's my birthday too. No, definitely did not want that. Anyhow, today we're talking about something that shapes not only the customer experience, but the employee experience as well, incentives. Every company has them. Some are formal, bonuses, commissions, contests, scorecards, or performance reviews and promotions. And others can be a little less formal, praise, attention, flexibility, who gets celebrated in the meeting. But here's the real question. Are your incentives creating the customer experience you say you want? Recently, as you know, Starbucks announced a new incentive rewards program for their hourly partners, giving eligible baristas and shift supervisors the opportunity to earn quarterly bonuses, which are tied to sales, operational, and customer service targets. And this matters because Starbucks is not just saying the coffeehouse experience matters. It's trying to connect employee rewards to the behaviors and outcomes that shape that experience. And at the same time, we talked about this last week, Spirit Airlines shut down. And that reminds us of a different lesson. Spirit faced major financial and operational pressures. So we're not saying service alone caused the shutdown, but it does raise an important business question. What happens when a company competes heavily on price and the customer experience becomes increasingly strained? So today, John, you and I are going to be talking about incentives that drive service behaviors, how companies accidentally reward the wrong things, and how leaders can reinforce the right behaviors, and why customers ultimately feel whatever the company rewards internally. So a lot of companies, John, say customer experience is top priority. But when you look at what the employees are measured on, rewarded for, promoted for, customer experience barely shows up. Why do incentives have such a powerful impact on service behavior?
Well, it's sending a message several ways. One, it's what you're telling employees that is important as a company. And so it's top of mind. Employees, I think intuitively want to do a good job. And they want to, and what gets recognized gets repeated. So it's like incentivizing your children, right? If you're incentivizing them to get great grades but then there's always unintended consequences, even with the best of incentives, and you have to watch those. So yeah, a silly example is if your kid feels pressure to get straight A's, maybe they're cheating, to do that, or because they feel the pressure, or they are stressing out taking Adderall to stay up for days on end. There's always unintended consequences. Also, so, we talk about incentives, which align with KPIs, key performance indicators. What are you tracking? And is it tracking the right behavior? So it's so important. And I was thinking about this the other day. Employees will do what for the most part, I believe this, good employees will do what you tell them. So we have an employee that's been with us at least, I think, 24 years, Lindsay. And people are shocked when I tell this story. Lindsay is a rock star at customer experience, but she always wasn't. When she first started 4 years ago, she was a receptionist at our first business, John Roberts Salon. And we told her, this is the policies. And oh my God, Lindsay would, force the policy, even when it shouldn't have been. Like, no, not in that case, Lindsay. But you didn't know. And at first I was like so mad at her, thinking, why would she do that? And then I realized, well, that's our policy. And Lindsay she's a good employee. So when I changed it on her to, all right, forget policy, make the customer happy. That's what she did. And she did anything it takes, and she still does. But she does, and you still see this. I know you see it too. She has that knee-jerk defensive reaction to protect the brand. And you kind of have to help her pull back. There's nothing wrong with it, but she doesn't want anybody taking advantage of us. And so, employees do what you tell them. And so if you tell them this is policy and don't let people, go against our policy, they will. And then you got to be careful with that,
Yeah. So is it fair to say then a company's incentive system reveals what it truly values and what it believes?
Yeah, and you have to be careful with that. You have to be really careful with that because, again, it's giving them a roadmap on how they should treat the customer. Unintended consequences is if we want to get payroll down in the call center or keep in check, and then we say, you only have, you have to average 2 minutes and 30 seconds per call. Well, now you're rushing everyone, and you might be missing sales because, hey, I want to make an appointment, and okay, all right, Thursday at 2. All right, maybe there was other things I wanted to book, or I was talking about having you cater a party, for my son's graduation. Besides just the transactional nature of trying to get me off the calls so you can, do so many calls per hour or keep your average call handle time, around what you're being measured for.
We talked at the top about Starbucks recently announcing a program where hourly partners can earn bonuses tied to store performance and operations, plus customer service targets. What does it signal when a company connects employee rewards directly to the customer experience?
Well, that they're truly customer obsessed and they're trying to send it, reward that type of behavior. The one thing I want to ask you, Denise. So I think there's a fine line. You got to be careful with incentives. But I also am not sure if incentives is the only thing to get you to be nice to customers. I'm not sure that's a good thing, right? It's the old palm down versus palm up giving. David Wagner talks about this in his book, Life as a Daymaker. A palm up giver is I give you something and my palm is, waiting for a tip or whatever that is. Palm down giving is you just take care of someone and you don't even care if they know you did that or you get the recognition. So let me ask you this, 30 years ago, you started off as an esthetician in John Roberts Spa. Since day one, I only remember you as a customer service rock star. You always put the customer first. You weren't someone we had to, coach that much. Did incentives work for you? I'm sure we've had incentives along the way, but how does that work for you? Did anything make you want to do that more than
So I think there are some of us that were just good hires. I think there are some of us who, whether it's inherence, whether it's how we were raised, the job we had prior, school, whatever it might be, that it was instilled in us. And I think once you realize doing those things makes you feel good too.
Yeah, I always say the day maker feels the best at the end of the day.
Right. So that I think becomes your incentive. But for people who haven't experienced that yet, I think it's good to have an incentive until they learn it and feel it. And then, it becomes.
Yeah, because I don't want it to be unauthentic.
Correct.
I want it to be, and the best thing is that it transpires in other areas of their life, not just to the customer. That I always say my favorite compliment I've ever gotten is maybe by a parent who their daughter works for us and they come in and say, I don't know what you did to this person, but she's not the same, person that she was 6 months ago. Like, I know that, that's really a cool compliment to our culture.
When you think about this and, how to incentivize and that, what do leaders need to be careful about when designing incentives around customer service?
So we talked about like average call time, and you mentioned Spirit Airlines, which I think was a total victory for customers, customer experience, business models that they failed because they I guess made price irrelevant the opposite way, that how cheap they were still didn't matter. So here's an example. Spirit Airlines incentivized their gate agents to catch people that had too big of carry-ons, and then they got $30, 10, 20. Congress did something on this where they were incentivizing. Yeah, I know there's a balance between not getting take advantage of safety, whatever those things are, but it just wasn't a good system. But not all profits are good profits. And I'm going to read something from our most recent book, The Employee Experience Revolution. This part is titled, Not All Profits Are Good Profits. When organizations apply short-sighted thinking, focusing solely on sales and profits, they often enact bad profit policies that exploit customers. Think hidden charges, excessive late fees, overdraft fees, flight changes fees, etc. Short-term profits incentives push many companies in the wrong direction. Bonus plans reward executives for boosting short-term profit, even if they embrace practices that take advantage of customers and exasperate customer-facing employees, who are the messengers taking the brunt of the customer's frustrations. Going off script here, if I'm yelling at you because I was, 5 minutes late and you won't take me or whatever the silly thing is, and you're like, sorry, that's our policy, you're getting beat up 10 times a day by enforcing that policy. And you don't like your job, but you could get fired if you didn't. All right, back to my thing. The truth is, most incentive programs hold teams accountable primarily for meeting costs or revenue targets. Whenever profits are squeezed, an organization's tendency is to seek short-term profit opportunities such as bad profit policy. Companies relying heavily on bad profits alienate customers, offer opportunities for emerging brands to capitalize. For example, Blockbuster. Back in the early 2000s, Blockbuster wouldn't go to a subscription model because they made $800 million in late fees, or 16% of its revenue was because you brought the VHS back late, or DVD, whatever it was. Enter Netflix, so long Blockbuster. Okay, so here's really my favorite part: eradicating bad profit. So one of my favorite all-time CEOs he's still alive, but he just retired in the past 2 years. Walt Bettinger found out early on in his tenure as CEO of Charles Schwab that 1/4 of Schwab's revenue, 25%, resulted from bad profit. So he asked his team to rank in order the offending policies, putting the worst at the top of the list, and committed the company to working from the top down, eradicating each policy so that within several years, they all would be gone. Bettinger realized this practice was essential to creating a customer service culture. And here's the best part. Under Bettinger's leadership, the value of Schwab stock has grown from $13.59 at the beginning of 2009 to over $100 per share in 2022, with market capitalization increasing tenfold. Surprisingly, the CEO has received numerous awards over the past decade, including Fortune Magazine Business Person of the Year 4 times, as well as landing its number 7 global business person spot. Charles Schwab's offers an outstanding example of what can happen when leaders have a true understanding of the customer service experience and structure their policies with a moral compass firmly in place. Probably more than you wanted to know, but I just thought it was an excellent example of both bad and good.
It's a fabulous example. It's a great exercise for leaders to go through too.
Yeah.
I wonder how many realize what that number looks like in their business. Yeah, you talked about relationships, and a company can say we care about relationships. But like you said, if employees are only rewarded for speed, transactions, volume, or sales, that's what they're going to optimize for. How do incentives show up in the customer experience, even when customers never see the incentive plan?
Yeah. So, I think it should all be around what, a great experience is. And a great experience sometimes can, in the short term, not be the best, but in the long term, the retention, the referrals, the word of mouth. So, anything to do with retention and referrals forces the bottom line is, you're not going to, move the needle significantly in re-sign rates, retention, and referrals if you're not giving a great experience. And so anything that reinforces a great experience. Now, you have to spell out what that experience looks like, and you have to celebrate it and do all those things. But it's, the customer's the benefactor of it. But which means I have no problem with our businesses and giving incentives, paying more, a higher commission, a bonus on, re-sign rates, referral rates, because that means the company's saving money on marketing and advertising and client attrition. Listen, the opposite's true. Retaining a significant percentage of your customers, and that it's different for every industry. Well, that means they're doing brand terrorism, about your brand to other people if they're not coming back. Or you got to advertise more and discount more. And so if someone's crushing it with the experience and we can track their re-sign rate, retention rate, referral rate, we can share that with them.
Where do you most often see companies accidentally rewarding behaviors that could actually hurt the customer experience?
Well, again, a lot of things we just explained, with the average hold time or enforcing policy, or even in the salon business, when we were going into early on, we were just a hair salon, as you know. And then whenever we hired you, because I think you were our first spa employee. Is that true? Is that safe to say?
I think so. Or cat poop.
Yeah, so you were one of the first two when we opened the spa, which is, pedicures, massage, facials, the full gamut. So when we were doing research on if we should go down that, was how much gift cards you will sell being a spa. Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, holidays, totally true. Like, that's unbelievable how, just it explodes from a gift card, which is great for cash flow. But the one thing that almost every spa owner bragged was like, we'll sell 100,000 gift cards for Mother's Day, and less than 50% of them will redeem them. And, that's 50,000 profit that, So they put expiration dates, and then when you try to come in, they're like, "Oh, sorry, it expired. Maybe it was a year long or whatever it was." But that's backwards. Because instead of having, let's now bring it to an individual, a husband buys his wife a $250 gift certificate that she never uses or doesn't use before the expiration. Well, instead of having her $250, if we know if we get her to come in and she becomes an average client, she's going to spend, $800. This was, back in the 90s. Who knows what I should know, but I don't, what the average guest spends per year. She's going to spend $800 back in 95 and refer to people, the average, every year. So I'd rather have the $850 per year plus 2 more people that are going to do the same, that compounds every year, than keeping her $250. So not only do we not enforce expiration dates, we would reach out to people that hadn't used their gift card and say, and the only reason why I liked an expiration date was sense of urgency. But everyone knows this, at least internally, they don't expire. You could bring it in, 5 years later, and we're going to, allow for it. Like I said, we did the opposite. Instead of hoping you didn't, use it and profit that $250, we'd read it out to you and say, "Hey, do you know you have a gift card that was bought for you last year? And, do you want us to extend the thing, or do you want us to book it?" Which was, counterintuitive to what people think. It's kind of like the Blockbuster thing, with 16%, $800 million came from late fees. Why would you mess with that?
Crazy. Spirit Airlines, their shutdown was tied to major financial and operational challenges. But it also gives leaders something to think about from a customer experience perspective. What should leaders learn from companies that compete heavily on price and underinvest in the experience?
Well, they're going to get that. I mean, exactly that. When they invest in their advertising, it's a race to the bottom. I guess the old saying was, you better be the cheapest or the best, and there's no in between. But even being the cheapest, we've seen a lot of case studies that we've talked about where Vanguard and just other companies just, went for being the lowest cost, and it backfired on them because of the frustration. They didn't have the budgets to staff a call center properly. So people are on hold times for, 25 minutes. Any business, you walk into a big Home Depot or DIY or whatever those things, which I have no idea what they are because I've never been to one, but you go into them and they have, they've cut staff out. And you're sitting there and trying to find, and you ask someone, and the best they can do is say it's in aisle 36. And aisle 36 is a long, massive aisle. And if they don't walk you there because they can't, now I'm 10 minutes into my shopping experience, and I still haven't gotten the first item on my list. I give up and maybe go home and just order on Amazon, and they lost all my business because they were being cheap. They can't afford the staffing because their prices are so low. But I mean, everyone loves Amazon. I don't know, most people realize Amazon's not the cheapest by far anymore, but their convenience, their customer experience action statement is to be the most customer obsessed company on the planet Earth. And everything they do and every decision they make revolves around that.
Just planet Earth?
Yeah.
Mars is nothing?
Yeah, right. I guess maybe, yeah.
Well, it sounds like there's a point where low cost becomes high friction for the customer, especially in the Home Depot example you gave.
Yeah, 100%. Ease of doing business is one of the 6 key factors to making an organization, a brand people can't live without.
So all the things that we can measure, when we talk about efficiency, productivity, sales, it's not bad to measure those, but it becomes dangerous when they're the only things that matter.
Yeah.
How can leaders tell when their incentives are starting to create the wrong customer behaviors?
Higher complaints. Ask your employees what's their number 1 or top 3 frustrations. And one of them could be getting beat up by customers, having to give customers bad news. And that's, you can't eliminate that, but you could dramatically reduce that. And contact centers are your greatest source to find, and now AI does this, voice of the customer sentiment, where you can track it and see what is most commonly said. Your website sucks. Couldn't find this, return, whatever that may be. But also just speaking to your contact center really gives them a voice. What are you hearing? What are people's customers, clients, guests, whoever they are, venting to you about? All those things. But again, AI, that's a really powerful tool of AI that tracks customer sentiment. And that's replaces almost focus groups with customers, because you're hearing in real time what they like and what they dislike.
They have I was recently on a Zoom type call, a
Yeah.
book note call. And afterwards, when I received the notes from the call, there were a list of, I'm going to say, sentiments that came along with it. And it showed like when people were paying most attention, when they were paying least attention, based on the
How
video.
can they tell that?
I don't know. It must have to do with when somebody's doing this or.
Yeah. But I always wanted to put there's a couple things that, actually Harvard Business School was doing an AI I don't know, case studies, and they called me, and it was just too short of notice, but I said, all right, dream anything I want. I want to be able to track a customer's, and I'm not sure what it is, whether it's one of those wearables, right? It could be your Apple Watch, it could be the Aura Ring, or whatever they call it, or the Whoop band, whatever it is. But during the journey of when they call, when they walk in, whatever your journey is, and to track their mood, lack of a better word. It's kind of an
The old mood rings.
yeah, right. Instead of an EKG, I called it, instead of an EKG, I wanted it to be an XKG, an experience. I don't even know what KG stands for. What is it? EKG,
Cardiogram.
echocardiogram. Yeah, so an experience cardiogram, and then it shows us what point of the journey you got frustrated, versus your oxytocin went up, and be able to, and I even wanted it as a speaker to know, like, when people were listening and laughing versus starting to look at their cell phone, or the things we do when we start being disengaged. I think that's so cool.
That's very cool. So
Yeah.
when is it coming to fruition?
They loved it, but it was just they contacted me too late. They were like, well, this is due next week. I'm like, all right, that's not going to be possible. But yeah, I think it's an AI opportunity just to see where the frustration points are. And like, I had an example with a great brand. I couldn't believe it. American Express. I think, they're excellent, but I had booked a trip using points and had to cancel it. And so I said to the person, she said, well, you could use it as credit. I go, can I get the points just returned? And she said, absolutely not. And I was so like when she said absolutely, I'm like, I was like, but then she added not. I thought that was like really, I don't know, like a nasty way to say it. And so, gosh, I wish you could. Unfortunately, whatever, but absolutely not. I thought it was really insulting.
Wow.
Yeah, I was so surprised, because I think American Express is one of those brands I can't live without.
Yeah. Wow. That is
Yeah.
surprising.
Yeah.
That sounds like someone was reading a script and didn't realize the next word was there.
Yes, because she said it so happy. Absolutely not.
All right, John, if there is a leader out there listening that wants to build a world-class service culture, what specific behaviors should they be looking at recognizing and rewarding?
So anything that reinforces the experience you want them to provide. We've talked on past podcasts, my favorite, NPS. Right? That's another one that even Fred Reichel, the founder of it, says had unintended consequences. And people were just obsessed on that. And, it created some bad behaviors. So earned sales growth, which Fred Reichel now came out with, that I absolutely love, is tracking repeats. How much of your sales is repeat and referrals versus bought, which is advertising. So I think that, to me, that's the number one way if your business model tracks where your customers come from. Not every business model does. The Ford. Tracking Ford. If family, occupation, recreation, and dreams, a lot of our clients, most of our clients that have CRM systems have implemented Ford in their CRM system. So now I can see that Denise had, 8 Zoom meetings or face-to-face meetings or clients or whatever it is based on the business model. And you could run a report that says of those, whatever number I said you had, 8 this week, how many of those clients did she update their Ford fields? And now, we could, whether you reward them or not, we've done it where at the end of the month, the person that had the highest percentage of Ford accumulation, documentation, whatever it is, won an iPad or an Apple Watch or whatever gadget. But just seeing that report every week showing you that you're in the 50 percentile, low bottom 25 percentile or upper made you more aware of it. And then not only does it make you more aware of it and you start seeing the impact it had not only on your customers but you, and that you felt better because when you were listening and hearing that they had a graduation next week or a wedding or a funeral, you were then able to take action on that. So, all these things are great, but also at the end of the day, it's TOMA, top of mind awareness. So besides just financial rewarding, you're getting a higher commission, or in the salons, we have level 1s through 10 designer. And the way you get to a level 1 is entry level, just went through training. They're going to be less expensive for their haircuts. And how you get to each level is based on the experience we want you to provide, your retention rate, your return, your referrals, all the things. And so when you hit those numbers, 3 or 4 months in a row, you get promoted to level 2. You get a price increase, a commission. So you get double raise. You get you are now charging more, and you also get a higher commission at that, price rate. But those are all things that, you have to be doing, which is all benefiting the experience. If you're just solely focused on giving a great experience, all those things take care of themselves instead of so top of mind awareness, so I'm getting off track. So companies like Above and Beyonds. All right. Yeah. So the John Roberts Spa customer experience action is be the best experience in our guest day. And then the pillars are know more, love more, give more. The give more is the above and beyond pillar. But now we can celebrate every day, every week in whatever live in communication channels. Hey, I want to tell you how Lindsay was the best part of our guest day. Here's what the client said. Oh my God, I couldn't believe she did that for me, or she remembered this or that. And then you could focus on what pillar that is. That's the know more pillar, that's the love more pillar, or that's the give more pillar. And the third pillar, if you've been following us in a customer experience action statement, has to do with the above and beyond. Own it. Ours is give more. And so we have a Give More Award that we celebrate the best story. But all those are creating top of mind awareness. All those are creating FOMO of like, God, I should be doing more of this, and what Denise did yesterday for a client, I've had that happen to me 20 times. I never thought to do that. Never thought to go start her car, brush off her snow, walk her out with an umbrella, whatever that case may be. And so it's all top of mind awareness, advertising. This is who we are. This is our culture.
I love that, because great service, to tell someone to provide great service is just too vague. And to have them actually change behavior by doing these things is huge. Recognition is what leads to a lot of it, don't you think? I mean, it becomes a teaching tool for the rest of the organization.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be a financial reward or a car or, whatever the heck the thing is. People love the recognition part. But again, I have no problem if someone's actions are saving the company money, sharing that in, like I said, a higher commission rate. Our consulting, our re-sign rates with our consulting clients, the consultant gets a higher commission on the re-sign rate because they are asking to do more work with us. That sales cycle compared to a client that Googled consulting companies. And we are one of 5 that came up, and we got to go through a dog and pony show and a 3 to 6 month sales process with a bunch of Zoom calls and proposals. That all gets eliminated on a re-sign rate. They're not checking with anyone else. They know our prices. They're saying, sign us up for more. The consultant deserves a higher commission rate.
All right, listeners, before we continue, if your organization is serious about creating a customer experience revolution, the DiJulius Group can help you turn service from a slogan into a system. Our team works with leaders to define the experience that you want to deliver, help you create non-negotiable service standards, train your teams, align your leaders, and make the right behaviors stick across the organization. Because world-class service doesn't happen by accident. It has to be designed, it needs to be taught, it has to be measured, and it has to be reinforced. To learn more about working with the DiJulius Group, visit thedijuliusgroup.com or schedule a call at tdg.click/call. Okay, now back to our conversation, John. I like that you talk about incentives don't have to mean big money, commissions, giant prizes, because a lot of leaders think we just don't have the budget for a big incentive program. But culture's not built through big checks. It's built through what gets noticed. What are different ways that leaders can recognize the service behaviors consistently without making it feel forced or cheesy or having the same person show up every time as the winner?
Yeah, I think it's celebrating. It's the Give More Awards. It's the Cameron Mitchell. I learned this restaurants, the Milkshake Award, which was their slogan was the answer is yes. Now what's the question? And if you what they did at so the Milkshake in their world, they're a chain of high-end brands in the restaurant industry, and traditionally, they don't have high-end brands, don't have milkshakes on their menu. And if you bring your kid to that, which they probably don't want, not Cameron Mitchell's, but high-end restaurants don't want you bringing your kids to the restaurant. But their whole thing was, hey, if someone asks for something like a milkshake, we can do it. There's blenders in the bar. We have ice cream on the menu. Do it. And so that is kind of what it would signify the answer is yes. What's the question? Mantra and philosophy and how they wanted everyone to treat their customer, right? If the kid wanted French fries and they don't sell French fries or have French fries, but there's a McDonald's next door, run next door and get the kid French fries, keep the kid happy, keep the parents here, spending money, ordering drinks, appetizers, thing. So the way they branded that metaphor, that icon, the milkshake, is orientation. You heard about the answer is yes. What's the question? The milkshake. And then several examples of how, they would make things happen. And so then whenever you walked in, there was milkshake. Employees might wear a milkshake pin, and that was that they got recognized for going above and beyond. Let me tell you about what Denise did, and here's a milkshake pin, and it'd be a conversation starter. At every company meeting, whether it's a new employee orientation, a manager's meeting, or their annual general managers conference in Vegas, because I was at all of them, every meeting started with everyone had a milkshake in front of them, and they would, do a toast, and they'd tell a story. And it was just, you couldn't not think about the answer is yes. What's the question? Make it happen. And, it's just those things. And just people love recognition and celebrating that recognition with their loved ones. Whether, you're going to go home and do that. Hey, you wouldn't believe I got recognized. Hey, I won an award. Whatever. Or us hopefully telling their family what a rock star they are. I always say you got to get the family members, spouses, significant others to love their job, their spouse's job. Otherwise, they're going to be on the opposite side of the fence and saying, can't you find a job that's not so demanding, that maybe pays you more, all those things that, we compete. I think we compete with spouses, partners, more than we compete with other companies trying to take our good employees away.
The milkshake, I think it's brilliant for multiple reasons. It has become embedded in their culture.
Yeah.
They practice it through, in multiple
Storytelling.
storytelling is so huge. How do if someone wants to create that kind of culture, now they have pins and that kind of thing too, right? So you see it, it keeps it top of.
Yeah.
How do you bring something like that into your culture? And how do you collect those stories on a regular basis?
Yeah, and that's the key, and hopefully we've visited this on, I don't know what the podcast was called, but I know the topic was creating above and beyond, because that's one of our commandments, and that this is exactly what we teach companies. So I remember early on, and hopefully I could be still guilty of this, but someone will find out that I own John Roberts or the DiJulius Group or Believe in Dreams and say, "Oh my God, I want to tell you, this literally happened to me last week." Someone says I go to Chagrin Falls and I go to Gina, and she is like, I'm like, I know, and they're telling me how great Gina is and what she does, and she remembers, and just all these incredible stories. I go, I know. I mean, Gina's the best. But I didn't do anything with that. I didn't, and I should have. You just reminded me of it, and I preached to it. I usually would say, "Would you send me an email or a voicemail so I can share it company wide and make Gina feel 7 feet tall, but also make people jealous of Gina's recognition and that they need to do it too." That's who our culture is. And so documenting every story. And so then you have these stories that maybe people vote on. Hey, we should, so John Roberts, their milkshake is what Larry Gold used to bring us. What is that called? The Bear Claw. Yeah. So it's called the Bear Claw. So we have a long time client that went above and beyond for us every Friday and would bring in a Bear Claw, which is a pastry. Oh, you might be able to explain it better than I can. To every location. And he just did things for our staff, like for their weddings. He'd have a Bear Claw delivered to it was just unbelievable. So when he passed, I mean, the guy was 95, 96 when he passed. He was just such a incredible, we named a room after him. We've only done that for employees. So the Bear Claw became our milkshake. And now we have the Bear Claw Award and Bear Claw stories and, all that. So you find your story, you got to collect your stories. You want to create a database of stories. The new employee orientation, you want to share the top 10, top 20 with them. So their eyes pop out of their head saying, "Oh my God, you're allowed to do that." And my last job, I would have gotten fired for it. No. Here, you'd get fired if you didn't do that. Like, we want you to do that. We praise you for doing that. You'll never get in trouble for something you do. You only get in trouble for something you don't do. So getting those stories and then sharing them, every week, on our videos that go out to all employees of who did the milkshake, who did the Bear Claw.
That's great. Is there a way that you collect those stories from clients?
Yeah. So again, anything that's emailed, voicemail, you collect them, you forward them, you share them.
Do you seek it?
Well, yeah. So, asking people, "Hey, did we miss the mark today? Please share it with us so we can make it right and reduce it from happening again." You'll never eliminate it. And then the second part is, was someone a hero? I don't know the terminology. We want to know that so we can celebrate it. And it might be in a different order. Maybe but just advertising that we want to know how we're doing so we can celebrate it or address it in a positive way of reduce it from happening again to you or anyone else. And then you have a document wherever, you keep your thing of, it starts off as a dozen great stories and it becomes 200 and 2,000. And then you can see, all right, what haven't we shared in a while or ever? And you can share it in your daily huddles, weekly, town hall meetings or videos, orientation, whatever it may be. So you're just that's who we are. That's our culture. Like, you think that story's impressive? I could tell you 20 stories that make that, blow it away. But then you go to the opposite end of the spectrum. You want to be careful that your stories aren't only heroic stories, because, I always use this example. When I was working with Starbucks, or when we were working with Starbucks, one of their stories was that their barista literally donated a kidney to a customer. Great, but if that's your celebration story, well, I only have 2 kidneys, so I can only do that maybe once in my life, or I don't want to do that for a stranger that I really don't know. I want to save it for, a loved one. So you want to make sure they're low-hanging fruit stories. Like I said, it's raining, give her an umbrella, walk her out to the car, brush off her snow. Low-hanging fruit that anyone could do if they're paying attention, and not just saving the baby in a burning building stories. While those are great, those opportunities are going to be few and far in between, and they're going to fall kind of on deaf ears because I'm not willing to go into a burning building for my customer, which is totally okay. But are you willing to go out in cold weather and start her car and brush off her snow? Well, if you're not willing to do that, then this is the wrong place for you.
How do you create that kind of culture that gets employees to do these things and gets the clients to write about it and encouraging them to give the feedback without incentivizing something that's going to create bad behavior? Because we've all had the car dealership that, that are give us a 10 out of 10. If
You have to give me all 5s.
Right.
Right. I think it's just everything we're saying. It's collect. First off, wherever you are in your journey as a leader, whether the company's 2 months old or 30 years old, there are stories that just happen organically. Start collecting. Ask your employees, what's the best story you've ever done or heard that we've done here? And now you start with the database, and then you're building it. Then you're advertising your customers exactly in your emails, point of sale, anything, and people love to share good news. Sometimes they have to be coaxed. Like I just said, like, I can't believe, and you made me think of it, this wasn't planned, that I failed to share a great story with Gina, because I hear so many about her that I'm like, yeah, that's Gina. So, right? I mean, so I had an opportunity to make Gina feel better, or feel even better, and, demonstrate to everyone, why can't they be like Gina? So it's just collecting those stories. Clients love to share. So if you're reminding them, hey, is there any stories you want to share with us? We'd love to celebrate. They want to be part of that. That's why people like to give testimonials. And something that someone told me about was when you give a testimonial, it's also doing something to your brain, the customer's brain, reconfirming why you want to stay with this brand. Well, I got to tell you, every time I've done business with XYZ, they're always consistent. They always make me feel like that. And then they're like, it's wiring their brain that you're a brand they can't live without. So there's so many benefits of that. And then it's just taking the best and celebrate. And then on the interview process, you share those and you say, hey, give me a story when you went above and beyond. And that they may have a great story, or their story may be, I smiled at a customer, right? That's okay. That's okay. I'm not saying that that's a deal breaker because of where they came from. That might not be, they were encouraged to do anything more. All right, let me tell you some stories here that we've done. And again, not the Herculean stories. You could give one, but just the simple, umbrella, brushing off the snow, hearing something on a phone that, you're going on a trip next week, you're my client, and I send you the link to the best hiking trails because I know you're a hiker or a runner, or pickleball, whatever, or the best Italian restaurants because it's the first time in that city. Those little things that take less than 30 seconds to do, but you can read an employee, they could say, wow, like, you expect your employees to do that? Yeah, right? And that's a filter. Or they get energized, like, oh my God, your employees are allowed to do that. Yeah, so it starts from the recruiting standpoint all the way to, recognizing them, weekly, yearly, annually, all that.
Great. How do you feel about employees recognizing other employees? Because I know there are some that are unsung heroes, right? That
Palm down givers.
Yes.
They do things for people because they want to do things, but they want no recognition. And so I used to complain about that. Like, Denise, you have to tell us when you do that so I can celebrate that story, but you didn't want the recognition. So you did this. I wrote about it in one of my books, is when you first got promoted into leadership back at John Roberts Spa in the early 80s. That was a joke, early 80s, Denise. I gave you, 100.
Remember.
Right. You know the story better. I gave you, I don't know, 100 caught you doing something right cards and said you got to get rid of these in the next 30 days, which would have been really hard. I'm sure it was way too ambitious of a goal. And you sent out 50 with a blank one stapled to it. And so send out something to Chris Woj for something amazing that she did. And you caught her doing something right. And then the one stapled was blank and you told her she had to now do it, which was brilliant. Yeah, you only needed to send out 50 to get 100. But yeah, we need people to think on each other. So having contests, whatever, to get more of those stories. Their stories are out there, but if we don't get them, solicit them, and then not do what I did when someone tells me how great my employee, which all the time I hear, and now you got me thinking I'm probably not doing this hardly ever, is then taking that story. And it's always best in the customer's voice, whether they leave you a voicemail, text you, or email you, whatever, you want it to come from them. Because I'll be like right now, I'm literally after this podcast going to reach out to that person and ask her to send me an email about how great Gina is, because she's going to go into detail. And, it's the telephone thing. If I try to remember what she said, I'm not going to do it any justice.
John, if a leader remembers only one thing from this conversation today, what should it be? What's the simplest truth about incentives and service culture?
Have your incentives and recognition based on what you want, and not profit. Profit's a byproduct of this stuff. Chick-fil-A, Amazon, Zappos, all the great companies. Profit to me is like oxygen. We don't wake up saying, all right, I got to take a breath in, I got to take a breath out. If we stopped breathing, we'd cease to exist. But whatever the behaviors are that you want your employees to give, that should be what's recognized, talked about, and incentivized. And if you're listening to this, it's probably the experience, and the experience done right is the most profitable thing you could have, because you don't have to compete on price, and you don't have to advertise as much because your customers are doing it for you. You're retaining the majority of your customers, so we don't have to replace all the ones we're losing, and they are doing the marketing for you. So your incentives and recognition should be aligned with the experience you want delivered.
Listeners, I hope you got a lot out of this important conversation. And I hope it forces you to look in the mirror. Most companies don't have a service problem because their employees don't care. They have a service problem because the system is not designed to reinforce behaviors they say matter most. If we reward speed, we get speed. If we reward shortcuts, we get shortcuts. I feel like it's a tongue twister. If we reward sales, we get sales. And if we reward survey scores without looking at the behaviors behind them, we get employees chasing the score instead of serving the customer. Recognize ownership, empathy, follow through, personalization, teamwork, problem prevention, and service recovery. Those behaviors start to become the culture. Customers do not experience your mission statement. They experience what your company rewards, measures, and coaches. So for everyone listening, here's your challenge. Look at what your company rewards. Who gets praised? Who gets promoted? What metrics dominate your meetings? What behaviors are quietly tolerated? What stories get repeated? And then the hard question, are we incentivizing the experience we actually want to deliver? If you want to learn more about how the DiJulius Group helps organizations create world-class customer and employee experiences, visit thedijuliusgroup.com or schedule a call at tdg.click/call. Thanks for listening to the Customer Service Revolution podcast. Thank you, John, for being with us today.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you, revolutionaries.
We'll see you next time.